So, you know that feeling, right? That really important task. It's just staring you down, practically screaming for your attention. But suddenly, I don't know, the dust bunnies under the couch, they become utterly fascinating. Or maybe it's that urgent email, needs a proper reply. But somehow, yeah, scrolling through social media feels, well, way more pressing. Look, we've all been there. Every single one of us, I bet. Maybe you're a student, you've got this huge term paper looming, feels like it could decide your whole future. Or you're a professional, that crucial report, the one the whole project hinges on. Or maybe, you're just trying to schedule that dentist appointment you've been meaning to make for, 6 months, putting things off, delaying. It's just,
Yeah,
it's a deeply human thing. But here's the really key distinction, and this is where we're going to dive deep today. Not all delay is actually procrastination. Sometimes waiting makes sense. You need more info, right? Or you're strategically doing something else first. That's just smart. Today, we're cutting through all that to really understand what real procrastination is, why it grabs hold of us so tightly, and maybe most importantly, what we can actually do about it. How we could reclaim, our focus and maybe a bit of peace of mind.
That's such a critical point to start with, that distinction, because we use the word procrastination pretty casually, don't we? But to really get it, scientifically speaking, it's not just putting something off. It needs two specific things to be true. First, it has to be a voluntary delay. You are actively choosing not to do the important task. And second, and this is often the painful part, you're doing it even though you know deep down that this delay, it's probably going to have negative consequences. It's that gap, right? That frustrating space between what you intend to do and what you actually do. It's a kind of self-sabotage, really. We become our own worst enemies in that moment. It's almost like having this tiny little saboteur on your shoulder whispering, later, do it later.
Yeah.
Even when your rational brain, your future self is yelling, no, do it now.
Yeah.
And that internal fight, that conflict, that's exactly what we need to unpack.
Okay, so it's not just some minor quirk then, or just feeling a bit lazy sometimes. It's actually, harmful.
Yeah.
And the research, the data, it shows the impact is pretty wide-ranging, doesn't it? Quite significant. When you look at it, stakes are actually kind of high. Think about academics. Procrastination isn't just about slightly worse grades. It's linked to higher dropout rates, lower achievement overall.
Definitely.
And in the workplace, it's like a direct line to missed deadlines, right? Lower productivity and more stress. Not just for you, but for your whole team sometimes. Affects everyone.
Absolutely. The ripple effect is often underestimated.
And then personally, chronic procrastination.
Yeah.
It's tied to lower well-being, more anxiety, that constant background hum of guilt or shame.
And even incredibly serious health issues. I mean, putting off doctor's appointments, delaying healthy habits.
Yeah, delaying seeking help or making lifestyle changes. It adds up. So what does this really mean for you listening right now? It means this isn't just some small inconvenience we can just, shrug off. It touches, maybe even undermines almost every part of our lives, often in ways we don't fully realize. That subtle, constant grip.
Exactly. And it's so important to stress that point. Dismissing this as just laziness. That's such a common but really unhelpful idea. It completely ignores the powerful psychological forces, and frankly the biological ones too, that are really driving this behavior. This isn't some simple character flaw you can just fix with more willpower, just do it. Rarely works long term. So this deep dive today, our goal is to offer a more nuanced, a more scientific explanation for why we procrastinate. We're going to look at it through two main lenses, which are really interconnected. First, the psychological theories. What are the cognitive, the emotional drivers pulling us away? And then second, we'll get into the neurobiology, the actual brain circuits, the structures, the chemicals involved in this internal conflict. Our mission here isn't to shame anyone. It's not about saying, you should be better. It's about understanding, demystifying it, and then, crucially, equipping you with real evidence-based strategies, things that actually work with your brain, not against it. Hopefully empowering you to, boost productivity, cut down stress, and just feel better overall.
Okay, let's unpack this right away. When we think procrastination, maybe the first thing that comes to mind is, I'm avoiding this task because it's boring, or maybe it's just too hard. But what if? What if the deeper reason isn't the task itself, but how the task actually makes us feel? This is where the psychology gets really, really interesting. Thinking about procrastination as like an emotion management strategy, albeit maybe not a great one.
You've absolutely hit on a core concept there. The leading psychological models today, they overwhelmingly frame procrastination less as a failure of time management, though poor planning can definitely play a part, sure, but fundamentally as a breakdown in emotion regulation. The idea is when we face a task that triggers negative feelings, and this could be anything really, boredom, frustration, anxiety, maybe insecurity, self-doubt, even resentment sometimes.
Yeah, lots of possibilities.
Right. Our natural response is to want to make that discomfort go away quickly. And often, the fastest, easiest route to feeling better, at least in the very short term, is just put the task off. Avoid it.
So it's kind of like hitting a mental snooze button on those bad feelings. Just push it away for a bit.
Yeah.
But it's only temporary relief, isn't it? What kinds of feelings are we talking about here? What typically triggers this avoidance?
Exactly. It's a tragically short-sighted snooze button. And the feelings, they can be incredibly varied. It depends a lot on the task, sure, but also on us, our own internal stuff. Think about a student delaying a big research paper. The feeling might be sheer overwhelm, right? Anxiety about the scope, or maybe insecurity like, can I really write something good? Or maybe a professional avoiding prep for a big presentation. Could be fear of public speaking, definitely, fear of being judged, or maybe it's just intense boredom, like, ugh, compiling this data is just soul-crushing.
Yeah, I can feel that one.
For others, it could be the frustration of needing meticulous detail, or that little voice of self-doubt saying, you're not good enough to do this perfectly anyway. Basically, any feeling that makes us uncomfortable can become a trigger, and putting it off, that gives immediate relief. Temporary, yes, but immediate. Our focus shifts, right? Away from the anxiety-making thing towards something pleasant, distracting. Scroll social media, watch a quick video, organize the spice rack.
The sock drawer.
The sock drawer, classic. It offers that short-term mood repair, an instant little boost. Feeling better right now.
That's so interesting, because it really explains why we often put off things we're actually perfectly capable of doing, things we know we have the skills for.
Yeah.
It's not about whether the task is actually hard. It's about the uncomfortable feelings it stirs up in us. That's the real hurdle. So you could be, I don't know, a great writer, but the anxiety of the blank page, or the fear of not meeting your own super high standards, that makes you delay for days, weeks even.
Precisely. The delay isn't about the task's intellectual challenge. It's about the emotional discomfort it triggers. And the logic behind it from this emotion regulation view is, as I said, tragically short-sighted. The procrastinator basically chooses the immediate reward. I feel better right now. But they're implicitly accepting that later on they're going to feel much worse. Amplified stress, guilt, shame, maybe regret, usually right before the deadline hits.
Oh yeah, the deadline doom.
Exactly. And this sets up a really insidious, self-perpetuating vicious cycle. It traps us. Procrastination itself generates negative feelings, right?
Yes.
Guilt, shame, why did I do that again?
Yeah.
Those feelings then chip away at our self-esteem, our confidence for the next task, which makes starting that next challenging thing feel even more daunting, even more emotionally loaded, which of course fuels more procrastination. It's this downward spiral where avoiding discomfort just ends up creating more of it in the long run.
Okay, so if our feelings are like these strong currents pulling us away from tasks, how does our brain actually decide? When do we finally pull the trigger and start? Or conversely, when do we just keep putting it off? I'm really curious about how we might, quantify that internal debate. And this is where it gets fascinating, right? There's actually a kind of mathematical way to think about this.
Absolutely. To get more precise about that decision-making process, there's a very influential framework called Temporal Motivation Theory, or TMT, developed by Pierce Steele. TMT basically pulls together several existing ideas about motivation and self-control into one kind of unified formula. It helps us understand motivation itself and therefore where procrastination tends to show up. Conceptually, you can think of it like this. Motivation, expectancy multiplied by value, divided by impulsiveness multiplied by delay.
Wow, okay, an equation for motivation.
Sort of. It's like an internal cost-benefit analysis, but with these specific psychological factors weighing in. Let's break down those parts, because how they interact is really key to understanding procrastination. First up is expectancy. This is basically your self-efficacy. How much do you actually expect to succeed at the task? Do you believe you can do it well? If your confidence is low for a specific task, maybe you think, this report is way too hard for me, or I'm just not smart enough to ace this test, then your motivation naturally drops.
Right.
It's almost like a preemptive surrender, your brain saying, why bother putting in effort if success feels unlikely anyway? On the flip side, if you have a strong belief you can do it, even if it's tough, that acts like a powerful motivator, an internal go signal. Effort feels worthwhile because success seems possible.
That makes so much sense. If you truly don't believe you can get a good result, why waste the energy trying, right? Feels like self-protection in a way.
Yes, exactly. Minimizing potentially wasted effort, even if it backfires in procrastination. Okay, next element. Value. This is about the reward. How much reward do you associate with finishing the task? Or how much do you actually enjoy doing it? If a task is inherently interesting or fun or leads to something you really value, like a promotion, getting praise, learning a skill you care about, motivation goes way up, high value. But if the task feels boring, tedious, pointless, unpleasant, its perceived value is low, and that drastically cuts your drive to do it.
Yeah.
Think about the motivation difference between, say, a creative brainstorming session you're excited about versus reconciling a massive, boring spreadsheet.
Night and day. Totally.
Then there's impulsiveness. This is about how sensitive you are to distractions. Your tendency to go for immediate gratification instead of waiting for later rewards. If you have high impulsiveness, it directly lowers your motivation for long-term goals. Why? Because your attention is constantly getting snagged by quicker, easier pleasures right now. If every phone notification pulls you away, if the lure of a quick break is irresistible, if you crave that instant dopamine hit from social media, your impulsiveness factor is high.
That immediate gratification thing.
Yeah.
It feels so powerful sometimes,
Yep.
almost magnetic. Does this vary a lot between people? Like, are some people just naturally way more impulsive?
It does vary, yes, absolutely. Some people are naturally more sensitive to immediate rewards, but it's also something that can be influenced by context and strategies, which we'll get to. And finally, maybe one of the most crucial parts, delay. This is simply the time gap. How long until the deadline? Or how long until you get the reward for doing the task? This factor gets amplified by this cognitive bias we all have called temporal discounting. Basically, humans systematically devalue rewards the further off they are in the future.
Oh, right. A bird in the hand.
Exactly. A reward next month or even next week. It just doesn't feel as potent, as motivating as something you could get right now. The same goes for avoiding negative consequences. If the pain is far off, it feels less urgent. So the further away the deadline, the less motivating the task feels today. Now, let's connect all these dots. TMT shows us exactly when procrastination is most likely to bite. It happens when tasks have low expectancy, I probably can't do this well, low value, this is boring, pointless, and a long delay, the deadline is ages away. And this combination is especially potent for people high in impulsiveness, people who are easily drawn to immediate distractions. Why? Because the immediate, tangible reward of the distraction watching that video, checking your phone, easily overpowers the distant, abstract, uncertain reward of finishing the task. Your brain isn't being irrational per se, it's making a calculation based on these weighted factors, and it's heavily biased towards the immediate and the certain. Tragically short-sighted, often, but logical in its own way. Hashtag tag tag 1.3, cognitive and personality predisposition.
Okay, so we've got the task itself, how it makes us feel, this whole TMT calculation. But beyond that, what about us? Are some of us just more wired for delay? Are there underlying ways of thinking or even personality traits that make us more susceptible to procrastination, almost like a default setting we have to fight against?
That's a really insightful question. And yeah, the research absolutely shows that while the situation matters a lot, certain cognitive styles and stable personality traits definitely can create a stronger predisposition towards procrastination. It's not just about the task, it's partly about who we are. Let's start with one that often surprises people. Perfectionism.
Ah, right. You'd think perfectionists would be the least likely to procrastinate.
Exactly. That's the common assumption. But what we call maladaptive perfectionists, the ones driven by fear, not just high standards, they're often more likely to procrastinate. It stems from this intense, often paralyzing fear of making mistakes, of failing, of being judged harshly. The anxiety tied to not meeting their own impossibly high standards can be so overwhelming that they just avoid starting altogether. It's like it feels safer not to start and risk imperfection than to start and potentially confirm their fears of inadequacy.
That's a wild paradox, isn't it? The very drive for a perfect outcome becomes so paralyzing it prevents any outcome, like being too scared to launch the rocket because it might not reach Mars perfectly.
Precisely. It's a high-stakes avoidance strategy. Inaction feels safer than potential imperfection. Another big cognitive factor, which we already touched on with TMT, is low self-efficacy. Believing in your own ability to succeed at a specific task is huge. If you have low self-efficacy for something, you doubt your capabilities. That naturally triggers those negative emotions we talked about: anxiety, dread, frustration, and that makes you much more likely to delay. If you don't genuinely believe you can do it well, or maybe even adequately, why start the effort? It might just confirm your fears. The inner monologue is like, I'll probably mess this up anyway, so why bother?
Mm-hmm.
And then absolutely we have core personality traits using the Big Five model, which is a really robust way to look at personality.
Right, ocean. Openness, conscientiousness.
Exactly. Procrastination shows the strongest negative link with conscientiousness. Conscientiousness includes things like self-discipline, being organized, diligent, having a strong sense of duty, planning ahead. People high in conscientiousness, they're naturally more structured, more future-focused. So yeah, much less prone to procrastination. They tend to just get on with things.
Makes sense.
Conversely, procrastination shows a strong positive correlation with neuroticism. Neuroticism is about the tendency to experience negative emotions, anxiety, stress, mood swings, feeling emotionally unstable. So people who are more prone to feeling these negative states, they're more likely to use procrastination as that coping mechanism, that maladaptive emotion regulation strategy we discussed, trying to avoid the discomfort by delaying. And digging into personality like this, it brings up a really important question, doesn't it, for us, for you listening? If personality plays such a big role, how much of the struggle is actually within our conscious control? How much is just kind of how we're built? And this is exactly why understanding the neurobiology is so crucial. It takes us deeper into the brain's actual architecture, revealing the physical roots of these internal battles.
You might be sitting there thinking, yeah, this internal struggle feels so incredibly real.
Yeah.
Like you're literally battling yourself sometimes,
Yeah.
right? You want to do one thing, but you find yourself doing the exact opposite. We talk about fighting our urges, this push and pull inside. Well, guess what? It's not just a metaphor. It is literally happening. This next part, we drive into the actual physical conflict playing out inside our heads, this fundamental tug of war between different parts of our brain.
That's a perfect way to frame it. The psychological struggle, that gap between intention and action we feel so acutely, it's not just abstract. It's a direct reflection of a physical conflict within our brain's neural circuits. The core neurobiological story of procrastination, you can really understand it as this ongoing, often daily battle between two key brain systems. There's the older, more primitive limbic system and the newer, more sophisticated prefrontal cortex. Let's start with the limbic system. Think of this as the older, more ancient part of your brain. It operates largely automatically, unconsciously. It's geared for immediate survival, emotion, and seeking pleasure. Your brain's primal alarm and reward center.
Okay. Instincts, emotions.
Exactly. And key players within this system include the amygdala. This is like your brain's super fast threat detector and emotional processor. It instantly tags tasks that might cause discomfort, anxiety, boredom, difficulty as something to avoid, often before your conscious mind even knows why you feel averse to it. At the same time, another part, the nucleus accumbens, which is central to the reward circuit, lights up. It pulls you towards immediate gratification, that social media scroll, the tasty snack, binge watching that show, because it promises an instant pleasure hit.
A quick fix.
Precisely. This whole limbic system, it's intensely focused on the now. It doesn't really have a sophisticated grasp of the distant future or long-term consequences. Its agenda is simple. Feel good now, avoid bad feelings now. Makes it a powerful force against our rational plans.
So the limbic system is basically that primal voice saying, if it feels bad, run away. If it feels good, do it immediately. It's all about the present moment. Wow, no wonder it's so strong.
You've nailed it. It's the neurological basis of that present bias. Now, counterbalancing this ancient system, we have the prefrontal cortex, the PFC. This is right at the front of your brain, behind your forehead. It's the most recently evolved part, often called the CEO or the conductor of the brain.
The rational part.
The rational part, yes, but also much more. It's responsible for all our high-level executive functions, things like long-term planning, setting goals, exercising impulse control, making complex decisions, regulating our emotions, and crucially, projecting ourselves into the future, thinking about consequences, understanding delayed gratification. The PFC is the source of that thought. Okay, I really should work on this report now, even though it's unpleasant, because it avoids stress later and helps my career. It's always trying to steer us towards future goals. Now, here's the fascinating connection. Procrastination happens precisely when those immediate, emotionally charged signals from the limbic system, the avoid this, seek that pleasure now, signals manage to override the more rational, future-focused plans coming from the prefrontal cortex.
The battle.
It's a failure of what neuroscientists call top-down control. Your internal CEO, the PFC, loses the negotiation with the impulsive primal parts demanding immediate comfort or reward. It's not just a feeling, it's literally a physiological tug-of-war for control happening inside your skull. And often the limbic system wins in the short term because its signals are faster, more automatic, more emotionally intense. Hashtag 2.2, the role of dopamine and temporal discounting. Again, but from a neural perspective.
Okay, we talked about temporal discounting earlier, how future rewards just don't seem as appealing. How does the brain actually do that, like biologically? What's the chemistry involved in devaluing the future like that?
Brilliant question. It takes us straight to the core of the brain's motivation machinery. And the key chemical messenger here is dopamine. Now, dopamine often gets called the pleasure chemical, right? Like, oh, this gives me a dopamine hit, it feels good.
Yeah, that's the common idea.
But that's a bit simplistic. Its primary role is actually more about motivation, anticipation of reward, and driving goal-directed behavior. Dopamine is the signal that says, hey, pay attention, this is important, go get it. It fuels our drive to seek out and pursue rewards. It's the engine of wanting.
Ah, okay. So it's less about the pleasure after you get the thing and more about the drive to get it in the first place.
Yeah.
The anticipation, that's a key difference.
Precisely. It's the wanting system more than just the liking system. And here's the crucial part for procrastination. This dopamine system is incredibly sensitive to how immediate and how certain a reward is. Think about it. An immediate reward, like the buzz from a social media notification, or the taste of a sugary snack, or watching a funny video triggers a reliable, quick, strong dopamine release. Your brain gets that instant hit, reinforcing the behavior. It learns, do that again. Quick reward. But a distant, abstract reward, like the feeling of pride when you finish a huge project next month, or the long-term health benefits of exercising today, it's just too abstract, too far away in time, often less certain. It doesn't trigger a powerful dopamine response right now, in the present moment. The brain struggles to feel that future reward now. It doesn't provide the immediate motivational kick. So if we connect this back, this is the neural basis of temporal discounting. Your brain's motivational currency, which is heavily influenced by dopamine, naturally gets allocated to whatever offers the quickest, most certain payout. It's not that you're inherently lazy, it's that your brain's reward system is fundamentally wired through evolution, when immediate survival was key to prefer immediate rewards. And it takes significant conscious effort cognitive control coming from your prefrontal cortex to override this powerful biological tendency. Your CEO brain has to actively fight against that primal dopamine-driven urge for instant gratification. And that mental effort, that self-control, it's tiring, it consumes resources, which helps explain why tasks with far-off benefits are so easily pushed aside by tempting immediate distractions.
Okay, so we've navigated the psychological twists and turns, the emotion regulation, the motivation calculations, and we've dived into the brain's physical battleground, the limbic system versus the prefrontal cortex, the role of dopamine. Now, how do these two big stories, the mental and the physical, actually come together? How do they give us one complete, unified picture of why we end up delaying things?
This is where it gets really elegant, I think, where the psychological experience and the neurobiology snap together perfectly. That subjective feeling of procrastination, that internal struggle, the guilt, the frustration, we all know it, isn't separate from the brain activity. It is the direct conscious experience of that underlying neural conflict. We can literally draw lines connecting them, map the mind onto the matter. For example, remember the amygdala's role, sending out that fast primal danger signal, this feels bad, avoid.
Yeah, the threat detector.
Right. That signal is precisely what psychology calls the negative emotions, the anxiety, the boredom, the self-doubt that trigger the avoidance response. When you consciously feel that dread about starting a task, that's not just a thought, it's a biological reaction processed in those deep, fast brain regions telling you to escape. The urge to flee is the amygdala doing its job, even if it's unhelpful now.
Got it. So the emotion regulation idea, putting things off to avoid feeling bad, is physically rooted in the amygdala's immediate reaction.
Wow.
That really does connect the two.
Absolutely. The desire for immediate relief has a clear neural basis. And remember the temporal motivation theory equation with expectancy, value, impulsiveness, delay.
The formula.
That equation is basically a formal description of the brain's complex valuation process, how it weighs things up. The value and delay components, for instance, are calculated neurobiologically through this interplay between different brain areas. The limbic system, especially the the nucleus accumbens, is super sensitive to immediate rewards, giving them huge weight. But then you have parts of the prefrontal cortex, like the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, VMPFC, which is involved in integrating emotion and decision-making, and crucially, assessing more abstract future value. So the brain is constantly weighing the immediate visceral payoff, limbic system, against the more abstract long-term benefit or consequence, VMPFC and broader PFC. And finally, the prefrontal cortex as a whole. That's the biological home of our long-term intentions, our goals, our aspirations. And it's the source of the conscious effort, the willpower needed to override impulsivity and choose delayed gratification. When we talk about self-control, we're really talking about the PFC exerting its top-down influence, trying to regulate those powerful, immediate urges from the limbic system. It's that constant battle, what feels good now versus what's good for us later. So putting it all together in this unified view, procrastination emerges fundamentally as a self-regulation failure. It's a situation where the prefrontal cortex, for whatever reason, maybe it's tired, maybe the temptation is too strong, maybe the task feels too aversive, just can't exert enough top-down control to override the limbic system's loud, present-focused signals demanding immediate avoidance or reward. It's not a moral failing. It's not a lack of character in the old-fashioned sense. It's a temporary loss in that internal neurological tug-of-war. Our ancient automatic brain systems just momentarily overpower our newer rational planning systems.
Wow, okay. So it's not a character flaw. It's literally our brain, wired for survival, wired for instant gratification, trying to protect us from discomfort or steer us to pleasure. But in our modern world, that wiring often backfires, hindering our goals, our progress, or well-being. That reframes it completely. It really takes away a lot of the self-blame, doesn't it? And it points towards, well, solutions that actually work with how we're built. That feels incredibly empowering.
Right. Now that we have this much deeper understanding of why we procrastinate, the psychology of emotion, the TMT formula, the neurobiology of brain conflict, now comes a really exciting part, the practical bit. How do we move beyond just telling ourselves or others, just do it, which clearly doesn't work most of the time? How do we use this knowledge to find strategies that actually align with our brain's architecture, strategies that work with our wiring, not just fight against it?
Exactly. This is where understanding translates directly into action. Knowing our limbic system is geared for immediate gratification and avoiding threats lets us stop blaming ourselves and start designing smarter interventions. We can essentially learn to trick, or maybe more kindly, guide that primitive system by tweaking the variables in that TMT equation. And we can also strengthen our prefrontal cortex's ability to win more of those internal battles. Okay, let's start with one of the most powerful tactics, making rewards more immediate. This directly attacks the delay factor in the TMT equation. Instead of facing one huge, daunting project with a deadline weeks or months away, which feels totally abstract and overwhelming to the limbic system, the key is to break it down. Break it into incredibly small, manageable subtasks, each with its own mini deadline, or at least a clear point of completion.
Tiny steps.
Tiny steps. Why does this work so well? Because finishing each small piece gives you an immediate sense of accomplishment, a little win, and critically, it delivers a small but consistent dopamine hit that feels good. It builds momentum. It makes the overall reward feel less distant. So instead of write the entire 50-page report, okay, today, just outline the first section. Then maybe write the intro paragraph. Then find 3 key stats for section 1. Each little check mark makes the next step feel less scary, less emotionally charged, and more achievable.
Yeah, I totally get that. That feeling of ticking even a tiny box off a list.
Yeah.
It can be surprisingly motivating, can't it? It's like giving your brain these little rewards along the way, keeping it hooked instead of letting it drift off to easier things.
Exactly. You're feeding the reward system just enough to keep it engaged. Okay, next TMT hack. Increasing task value. If a task feels boring, pointless, unpleasant, low-value motivation tanks. So how do we boost its value? One powerful way is to consciously find personal meaning. Connect the task, even if it seems mundane, to your core values or your long-term goals, or the positive impact it might have. How does this boring spreadsheet, say, contribute to a bigger project you care about? Does it help your team? Does it enable your own growth? Finding that why can really shift perception.
Okay, connecting it to the bigger picture.
Right. Another fantastic technique, especially for tasks you truly dread, is called temptation bundling. This idea from Katie Milkman is brilliant. You pair an activity you want to do, maybe even feel a bit guilty enjoying, with a task you avoid. For example, I will only allow myself to listen to my favorite podcast while I'm doing the dishes, or I'll work on this awful report for 25 minutes and then I get 5 minutes to scroll through Instagram guilt-free. You leverage a desired activity to make the unpleasant one feel more rewarding, or at least less aversive.
Huh? So you're basically lacing the bitter pill with something sweet, making the immediate reward for starting the dreaded task more appealing. Like, if I want the fun thing, I have to do the boring thing first.
Yeah.
That's clever. It really works with that immediate reward system.
Precisely. Working with the brain, not just against it. And finally, a huge one. Decreasing impulsiveness through smart environment design. Since our dopamine system jumps at immediate rewards and distractions, one of the most effective strategies is simply to remove the temptations before they even appear, proactively.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Pretty much. This means taking deliberate actions. Turn off phone notifications, all of them, if you can. Use website blockers or app timers for those distracting sites during work blocks. Create a dedicated workspace. Keep it clutter-free. Only have the things you need for the current task visible. Why is this so powerful? It drastically reduces the number of easy, immediately gratifying alternatives vying for your limbic system's attention. It makes it physically harder to get sidetracked. This gives your prefrontal cortex a much better chance to stay focused, maintain that top-down control, and resist the pull towards easier options. You're removing the triggers. Hashtag 4.2, enhancing emotional regulation and self-compassion.
Okay, so hacking the task and the environment makes total sense. But given everything we've learned about procrastination being driven by avoiding negative feelings, that anxiety, boredom, fear, surely learning to handle those feelings directly has to be a massive part of the solution too. We can't just manage the outside, right? We need to manage the inside.
Absolutely critical point.
Yeah.
Since procrastination is so often that maladaptive escape from discomfort, learning to manage those emotions head-on instead of running is key. One really powerful approach, backed by a lot of research now, is to practice acknowledging and just sitting with the discomfort. So instead of immediately trying to escape that feeling, oh, I feel anxious about starting this, followed by grabbing your phone, you practice noticing it. You use mindfulness techniques. You just observe, okay, I'm feeling anxious right now, or I'm feeling bored. You notice it without judging it, and crucially, without feeling you have to immediately act on it to make it go away.
Just notice it. Like watching a cloud.
Exactly like watching a cloud pass. Why does this work? It creates this tiny but crucial bit of psychological space. A pause between the feeling, the limbic trigger, and your automatic, often unhelpful reaction, grabbing the distraction. It dials down the power of the negative emotion because you're not instantly reacting, you're observing it. This gives your PFC, your rational brain, a chance to step in and choose a different response.
That feels like a huge mental shift. From instinctively needing to squash the bad feeling immediately to just letting it be there for a moment, giving your rational brain a chance to catch up. That sounds really powerful.
It is powerful. It's about building tolerance for discomfort. And deeply connected to this, maybe even more fundamental in the long run, is practicing self-compassion. Think about it. The guilt, the shame, the harsh self-criticism that usually follows procrastination. It's incredibly counterproductive.
Yeah, beating yourself up doesn't really motivate you to start next time.
Exactly. Research consistently shows the opposite is true. Practicing self-compassion, treating your own mistakes, your setbacks, your moments of struggle with the same kindness, and understanding you'd offer a good friend actually reduces future procrastination significantly. Why? Because beating yourself up just fuels that vicious cycle we talked about. It makes the task seem even more emotionally loaded next time, more reason to avoid it. Self-compassion, however, breaks that cycle. It fosters resilience, it allows you to forgive yourself for delaying, reduces the emotional weight, and makes it easier to re-engage with the task later without all that negative baggage. It allows for a clean slate. And this raises a really important question for you listening and for all of us, really. How can we consciously, actively cultivate that self-compassion when we slip up, especially when our default mode is often to be our own toughest critic?
Yeah.
It requires a deliberate effort, doesn't it, to literally choose kindness towards ourselves, even, or maybe especially, when we stumble. It's about recognizing our shared human struggle with these deep-seated brain tendencies. Hashtag outro.
So wrapping this all up, after this really deep dive today, what's the big takeaway? We've seen procrastination isn't just laziness. It's not a simple lack of willpower. It's way more complex. It's this profound, deeply human tendency. rooted in a fundamental conflict, really, within our brain's architecture. This constant battle playing out all the time between that impulsive, present-focused limbic system, wanting comfort now, rewards now, and our forward-thinking, rational prefrontal cortex, trying to guide us towards long-term goals and well-being.
That's a beautiful summary. And by truly understanding that procrastination is often this, well, maladaptive response to difficult emotions, and a predictable result of how our brains naturally discount the future, we can completely reframe the problem. It stops being about a character flaw, about lacking something others have, becomes about finding smarter, more compassionate, and scientifically grounded ways to manage ourselves, our emotions, our motivations, our environment. We're not fighting an unwinnable war against our own biology. We're learning to work with it, to gently guide it.
And the really good news in all of this, the truly empowering part, is that armed with this knowledge, you genuinely have the power to help your prefrontal cortex win more often. By breaking tasks down, making rewards more immediate, by finding meaning or using temptation bundling to boost value, by designing your environment to minimize those impulsive triggers, and maybe most profoundly, by changing your relationship with your own uncomfortable feelings through mindfulness, through self-compassion, you really can close that frustrating gap between what you intend to do and what you actually achieve. It's about working smarter, not just trying harder with brute force willpower.
Absolutely. And this whole exploration of procrastination, it really highlights this incredible interplay, doesn't it? Between our ancient evolutionary instincts and the demands of our complex modern minds. Our wiring was brilliant for immediate survival back then, but sometimes it works against our long-term goals today. Which does make you wonder, doesn't it? Where else in our lives are we experiencing similar internal conflicts, similar tugs of war between short-term desires and long-term aspirations? And think about how many other daily struggles, maybe with health or finances or relationships, could be navigated more effectively, maybe more kindly, if we applied the same scientific, compassionate lens. Something to reflect on. Keep exploring how your amazing, complex brain really works.